How are you? Hope you're having a nice time there. Good evening, everybody.
Kavod Arav, how are you?
Baruch Hashem. Okay. Yeah. So we did the Shulchan Aruch yesterday, but we couldn't finish it because we had some more Beit Yosef to do. So now we'll finish it off, Bezat Hashem, and get moving. Right. So here, this one, we had this one. This one we did. Okay, so I'm reading the Beit Yosef here. I think we did the tour on this yesterday, if I'm not mistaken. The tshuva of the Rosh that he brought there. So anyway, it says here, Klal Hey Siman Chet, it's the place where it is. ונהיה לפרש דבריו, שבמדליק מבעוד יום, דאילו במדליק סמוך לחשיכה, אפילו בנר שאינו של מצווה, שרה, כי הכי דלא לפלוג על מה שכתבו התוספות. Right, this one I think we did. We did this piece. Sorry. Yeah, so I guess it's over here. So he brings the tshuva of the Rashba. כתב הרשב"א שנשאל אם מותר לשמש לכנסת לתקן פתילות ועששיות ביום טוב אחר המנחה, מאחר שכוונתו היא לצורך היום. כי באולי אותה ביום יביאו שמן ואותה עששיות וידליק ונמצא שטורח לצורך היום. Yeah, we did this all also. So I guess we finished everything. Let me just make sure. So here the Beit Yosef says furthermore, ותשובה זו נראה שהיא חולקת על התשובה של הראש. Oh, look what it says, right? So he says that this tshuva of the Rashba seems to be arguing on the tshuva of the Rosh. אפילו אחר המנחה, right, בסמוך לראש, אפילו אחר המנחה, יש מצווה בהדלקת נרות. Right, so it says, right, that according to the Rosh, even after the time of Mincha already, the time of the Mincha prayers, there is already mitzvah to light the candles for the next night. ולרשב"א, אחר תפילת המנחה, אסור להדליקן. But, right, according to Rashba, it says, after mincha time, it's not allowed to light them anymore. לפי שמשם ואילך, אין מצווה להדליקן. All right, so now, so I didn't say it right. He's talking here about the second day already of Yom Tov. So he's telling you, right, that according to the Rashba, you can even light right before Yom Tov ends. The second day of Yom Tov is ending, even though it's going to be like a weekday afterwards. So even after mincha time, he says you can still light. But according to Rashba, he says it seems like you cannot do that. It's already too late. You missed the boat. You missed the train. That's what he's saying, right? So, okay. Right, so he says there's no more mitzvah to light them anymore after the time of mincha. Interesting. So that's what it says in the Agur also. So says Bit Yosef, it seems to me that it says, could be that really they're not arguing the Rosh and the Rashba. Oh, okay, well, let's see why. Because if he's coming to light, right, the candles in the synagogue, after time of mincha, Rashai ladlik. So then he's allowed to do that, right, in the synagogue. So it says also, according to Rashba, that there is a mitzvah to light candles in the synagogue, whatever hour it may be, right? Whatever, it doesn't matter what time it is. ולא אסר אלא לתקן הפתילות והששיות על סמך שמא יביאו שמן מאותה היום, right? So he says, really, the Rashba only forbade something else. He's not talking about the issue of lighting the candles in the synagogue, because that's allowed, like, all the way through, like the whole day, in other words. So he says he only forbade what? To fix the wicks, to prepare the wicks and the lanterns, relying on the fact that they may bring you some oil. באותו היום, משום דכיוון דגמור במנחה הסדרו של יום, אין דרך להדליק בו ביום. ואם כן, אין דרך להביא שמן אחר תפילת המנחה. So what he's saying is like this, right, the Rashba, according to this explanation. He's saying that don't now, start like, preparing wicks, and making candles, right before the end of Yom Tov. Why? Relying on the fact that maybe they're going to bring some more oil and you light some more. So he says, but you know what? At that time already, after mincha time, they're not going to bring any more. That's it. It's not the way to do that. So therefore he says, right, forget about it, just leave it, right? Don't light nothing here. In other words, if it's already prepared, you can light it. That you can do. But, don't prepare it depending, on, right, relying on the assumption that they're going to bring more oil. That's what he's saying. Okay, whatever. But as we said, right, in our time, this is not really relevant. Why is that? Because we don't really light candles in shul. We have electricity, we're good with that. Some shuls, by the way, they do like candles, they still have a custom to do that. But I'll tell you honestly, I don't think any shuls like candles on Yom Tov. I doubt that. I don't think any shul. I never saw anything like that in my life. They may do it on the weekdays, some shuls. But I think most shuls nowadays, they don't light whether it's a weekday or whether it's Yom Tov or anything else. Because it's not necessary. Right? That's the whole thing. So, since we're on this topic, by the way, it's good for me to mention to you, something, especially the women have to know this, right? The ladies, that there is a machloket amongst the contemporary poskim in our times. Which is the main lighting of the candles today, right? Is it the electricity or is it the candles that we light? So,
electricity, right?
I'm sorry?
You said it's the electricity, yeah?
Right. So here's the thing, right? That some say it's the electricity. Why? I heard this in the name of Rabbi Yashiv. So he has a good point, right? What's the point? The point is that it's because it burns brighter, it just gives you a lot more light. So, so what does the candles do, right? It's like a minor, it's a minor thing. It's like, it's almost like it's negligible. You know what I mean? So So therefore, right, says Rabbi Elyashiv that the main thing here today is the electricity. On the other hand, there are rabbis, who say the opposite. You know what they say, right? They say, well, yeah, okay, that's true, but at the same time, the rabbis decree to light candles, not to light electricity. You know what I mean? So the main thing is the candles, because that's what the rabbis decreed. So we do have somewhat of a machloket about that. So therefore, the best thing to do in order to cover both opinions, you want to be on the safe side. What you should do is before you light the Shabbat candles, turn off the electricity, and then make the blessing and light both of them. Light the candles and light the electricity. This way, the blessing will go on both of them, right? So whichever one is better, either way you're good. That's the So you'll be good either way, But if what happens is like this, right? If the electricity is already on, and you light the candles, so then what's the purpose? What did you gain by that? Not really much, right? You can say maybe it gives you like a little bit more spotlighting, whatever, but whatever. But it's not really that it's not really that significant in our times. I mean, if you want to, by the way, if you want to know the truth of that statement, go and try to spend Shabbat, right? One Shabbat without electricity and just light candles, right? You're gonna feel like you're in the dark. You know what I mean? So we don't. For us, that's not really enough light. That's not enough for us. It's like it's ridiculous. So we're not used to that, and that's not the way we live. So that's the thing. So
Rabbi, but
yeah.
if you can extend the light, like let's say you turn on the lights while you're lighting the candle, and then it's already 12 a.m. and the lights bother you, you cannot turn it off. So
Right. So the truth is, it depends on look, you live in a house, right? Okay, so
Yes.
you got lots of rooms there.
Yes.
Right? So what you do is like this, right? In your bedroom, it'll be dark because you want to sleep.
Yes.
You know what I mean? But in your living room, you can leave the lights on, no big deal, right?
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Yes,
So
yes.
it won't bother you, to have the lights on in the living room or the dining room, whatever it is, right? Wherever you want to eat, right? The dining room, yeah.
You
You
can
know,
also have kosher light bulbs where you just it's not a switch, but something that covers the light. And
yeah, I know what you mean. I know what you're talking about. But what do you call it? But even without that issue, of the kosher, non-kosher, whatever it is, right? Also you can use a timer. You know what I mean? A timer can turn it off.
yes.
I mean, so that you have all kinds of options. There's all kinds of things you can do.
Do we mention
Uh,
the Shinui?
I'm sorry.
Shinui?
Well, people ask me about these things. Regarding. I remember my chavruta one time asked me about this. Like, am I allowed to turn off a light? On Shabbat. You know what I mean? So, if you have these kinds of issues going on in your house, okay, first of all, let me recommend to you one thing, right? Do not bring incandescent bulbs into your house. Because many poskim, right? Most of the poskim hold that this is like a real fire, incandescent. The old ones, the tungsten, whatever it's called, right? All that stuff, right? That stuff is no good for Shabbat. You don't want to be dealing with that, right? So therefore, right, try to get rid of them. Also, by the way, they're going to bring you a bigger electricity bill as well. They cost more, to operate those old ones. So therefore, you don't want to have those in the house anymore. There's no purpose for them, whether it's Shabbat or any other day. It's what you should do is get all your house with LED, LED lights. You know what I mean? Because LED is not really a fire going on there, right? It's some kind of a physical chemical thing going on there. You know what I mean? So it's not really a fire. So therefore, right now, okay, if you have all LED in your house, okay, you're all good, right? That's what I did, by the way, when I came to America. Right away, the first thing I did in my mother's house was I changed all the bulbs to LED. So that's why it saves you a lot of problems. It also can save you, some sins. Also, this way you're much safer. So, but as I said, once you got the LEDs now, right, your whole house is LED. So now, the truth is, right, there's no prohibition to turn it off, especially when you do it with the shinui. when you do, why is that? Because it's not really a fire, the LED. So yeah, that would be so. Put it down with your elbow, whatever it is, God knows, right? That would be, that would be acceptable. Yes. So why is that? Because there's no extinguishing going on there. When you turn it off, you're not extinguishing anything. There's no fire there. That's the thing. So
If there's no fire, then why is it necessary to use a shinui at all? Is that just extra precaution?
I was afraid you were going to ask this question.
Yeah, because of the switch but still, when you are flicking the switch up
Yeah,
and down,
yeah.
isn't that creating a spark?
Oh, okay. Well, looks like you saved me there. Okay, maybe I have an answer for Shoshana, right? Okay. Well,
So
the
that's why
truth
you
is,
do the shinui. That's why you do the shinui, because there's still something going on.
right. So you know what? I have to tell you, you ladies are getting sharp. So God bless you. I take my hats off of you, right? Well, I take my hat off. Although I won't take my keep off, right? I'll keep my keep. I'll keep it on. But anyway, my hat is off. So
So my question is,
so,
so even if we do shinui,
yeah,
isn't that flicking the light switch? It doesn't matter
yeah.
how you do it. Isn't that starting a spark, and therefore
Okay, very
kindling?
very good question. Very strong question. So let's get into it. We're here. Let's get into the meat of the matter, right? The main course over here, right? Let's go in and delve in. Right? Cut into the main course.
Thank you.
Right. So here's the thing, right? The way it works is like this. I want to explain to you guys several things about the issue of electricity. You know, um, so as we said, right, basically, the truth is that there's many types of electric bulbs on the market, right? But the main ones are the incandescent, the old one, which hopefully we're not using anymore, because it's really, not really a good thing. The incandescent. So then we have the fluorescent, right, which came after, they came in like 50 years ago, fluorescent, right? So then, right, all of a sudden, 10, 20 years ago came in the LEDs, right? So right, when it comes to halakha, the incandescent is the worst, right, according to halakha, because most poskim say that there's a fire going on there. Why is that? Because that tungsten, right, the filament that's in that bulb is like so hot. It's like a fire. It's like a glowing fire. You know what I mean? So you don't want to deal with that on Shabbat. You so therefore, that one we don't want to deal with, hopefully. In fluorescent, the way the fluorescent works is like this, okay? When you turn on the fluorescent doesn't have like a fire in the bulb. So what is it? It's like a gas, that glows. It's a glowing gas, which is operated by electricity. So the fluorescent is better than the incandescent, because there's no fire there. But the disadvantage of the fluorescent is one thing, right? The way it works, the fluorescent, the mechanism, is that in order to get that gas going, you have to put a spark, right? There's like a starter there, So that starter, it like produces a spark, and that's what makes the gas glow. That's what it is, So therefore, fluorescent has that disadvantage of having a spark as a starter. But now, right, comes the LED, right, which is even better, because the truth is the whole mechanism there does not have any sparks or any fire. Okay? That's the thing. Fluorescent beats them all. There's also other types, halogen and right, all kinds of stuff. I don't want to get into that stuff, right? Whatever. That's not my prerogative right now. Right? We're not talking about cars now, right? All kinds of stuff like that. Halogen lamps, and things like this. Whatever, right? Whatever it may be. Anyway, right? The point is like this. So now, right, what you're talking about is something else. What you're talking about is that when you turn electricity on and off with a switch, right, there's a spark there going on.
There's a current that goes through. It's like a portal.
Right.
You open
It's a current.
uh-huh, and it
It's
goes.
a current.
Mhm.
So what is a current, by the way? We're talking about electricity, right?
Mhm.
The way they taught us in
Mhm.
school, when I was in school, I wasn't the best student in school, but I learned something there, right? Whatever. So they told us this, right? What they told us is like in science class, they told us that electricity is not a fire. It's a flow of electrons going through the wire. You hear my point?
Yes. Yes.
Electricity is not a fire. Here's the thing, though. Electricity, it can become a fire, right? As you know, right? Many fires are started by electricity. So how is that? How does it become a fire if it's not a fire? A lot of people ask this question, by the way, especially in the religious community, because they haven't learned science much. So they ask a question, right? The religious guys, who didn't learn science, right? They say, "Oh, but what? You're telling me it's not a fire?" But we see, right? Electricity makes fire a lot of times.
A surcharge. Right? It has to be. It has to have those. How do you call it? Yeah, it's a sub. I cannot. I knew that terminology. It's like a
Okay.
little piece where it monitors it lets go how much current can go
Right. So
through.
the thing is right, exactly. So here's the thing, right? We have in electricity, we have a wire, right, that conducts the charge, right? There's a wire. Usually that wire is made out of copper, if I'm not mistaken. Whatever it is, right? It doesn't really matter. So why do they use copper, by the way? Why not another metal?
It's a good conductor for electricity.
Oh, here we go. Here we go. We're getting to electricity class now, right? So
Mhm.
copper is a conductor. Okay? So therefore they like to use copper because it lets the electricity flow through freely, right, without interruption, without interference.
Isn't something like the electrons flow there
Right.
easily or
Right. So
something?
in other words, there's not much resistance there. It's like almost like free flowing. So in other words, if you use another metal in electricity, right, which does not conduct very well, okay? So what you're going to get is that the metal will get very hot because it cannot conduct. So it gets overloaded, right, with electricity. And that produces heat because it's holding it up. It's resisting it. It's a resistor. So we have conductor, we have resistor, right? So there are metals that are resistors. Okay? So what happens is that when you have a metal which is a resistor, it gets hot, starts to glow, and starts a fire because of the heat. Not because electricity in itself is a fire, but because it can't flow freely. So once it can't flow freely, what it does is it starts the fire. That's what happens. Okay? So we need to understand all this background information in order to make this right determination here. So what happens is like this. So now, right, getting back to our discussion, why is it that when you open electricity, right, some kind of current, there are sparks coming out of the wire sometimes? Why is that? What's the
Because
reason why the sparks are coming out?
Because it was too much current and it wasn't
Right.
the flow was too big for
Right,
the
too big,
conductor.
exactly. Yeah. It's so since sometimes it overwhelms the wire, so that's what causes the sparks to come out because it can't conduct it totally, Okay, so that's very important to know. So now here's the thing, right? Those sparks that come out, right? We have to understand a couple of things here. Number one, is that a prohibition from the Torah or from the rabbis? These sparks.
Rabbinical.
Oh, okay. Well, how did you know that?
Because back then we didn't have any light and it was kindling the fire. It's related to kindling the fire.
But
So
what I'm asking you is like this, right? Is a spark, is that considered to be a fire or not?
It is. It's something that kindles, that lights up. Yes.
Okay, good. Okay, so, but the truth is,
I
right,
don't think
according to
it's a fire
halacha.
because it doesn't have a fuel. It's just a spark, right?
Oh, okay. Well, yeah, very sharp. Okay, we're having good discussion over here.
Sorry.
Okay, so we're getting some clarity over here going on now. So here's the thing, right? That according to the poskim, the later authorities who talk about the issue of sparks, what they say is that it's only a rabbinical problem, even though it's actually a fire. Why is that? So, like you said, right? Because there's no fuel. So what happens is that with a spark, it just like lights up for a second and goes right out, right? Because there's nothing to keep it going. There's no fuel. So therefore, right, the poskim acharonim, they say that sparks are only rabbinically a problem. By the way, what's the source for that? There's a Mishnah actually that talks about that, right? About sparks. So the Rabbi Bartanura, he says over there, right? I think this is in Masechet Betzah, if I'm not mistaken. The Perush of Rabbi Bartanura, he says there that sparks are from the rabbis, rabbinically forbidden. Because they don't have a source. Okay. So now that we've determined, right, that sparks are only rabbinical, okay, now we have to go a little bit further. Here's the thing, right? Those sparks that are coming out of the wire, is that your intention to make them?
If you flip the switch, maybe.
Do you want those sparks? Does it help you with anything?
No.
They're just going to waste.
You certainly don't want to make a fire. I mean, that's
Right, that's for
opposite
sure,
of
yeah.
that.
Right, but the truth is, right, you don't want those sparks. Those sparks are a byproduct that you're not interested in. Okay? So in halakha, we call that eno mitkaven. You know what that means? It's not your intention. You get no benefit from that. Okay? And it's rabbinical. It's not from the Torah. So combining all these factors, right? There's also another thing, which is that when it comes to low voltage products, okay, if you look at the encyclopedia, it says there that there are no sparks. So you know why? Because it can flow freely, right, through the wire, like low voltage. Like what are low voltage products? For instance, like a phone, right? You're charging your phone, right, or you're charging a computer. These are low voltage, whatever they are. 16 or whatever. God knows what it is. So when it comes to low voltage products like this, the truth is, there's no sparks even. You have to know that. But even if you talk about the high voltage, let's say for instance, like an air conditioner, right, or an elevator, which is really a lot. It's a huge amount of voltage going on through there with the elevator. So there are sparks there for sure. There's no question when it comes to an elevator, But here's the thing, right? I don't care about them. I don't want them. I'm not interested in them. They don't help me. So since the prohibition is only from the rabbis, so therefore, right, it says the Mishnah Brura, theoretically, right, he's not talking about sparks, but he's talking about in general. When you have a rabbinical prohibition, which is not something which you're interested in, it's allowed. So therefore, technically speaking, right, those sparks, according to the bare bones halakha, really don't bother me at all. I don't care about them. So now the question comes, right? Why do I tell you to do it with a shinui, right? You get my question? Right?
Yes.
So what do you need a shinui for? That was your question, Shoshana. Right? So the answer is like this, right?
Yes.
I'm sorry?
Yes, that was my question.
That was your question. Okay, so here's the answer, right? The answer is that you don't need it really, but it's just like to be on the safe side. In other words, when it comes to Shabbat, we're a little bit more stringent, we try to be like Mahmir, so therefore, as a good piece of advice, I tell people do it with a shinui, Yeah. This way, it reminds you about Shabbat, whatever, whatever. But the truth is that you don't really need a shinui for this. Now, here's the thing, right? Especially when you're turning it off, there's an extra element there you have to understand. When you're turning it off, okay, since there's no fire there, right, as we said, right, in the LED, there's no fire in your phone, there's no fire in your computer, all these things, right? So when you're turning it off, okay, whatever it is, right, you're not extinguishing anything. So that you have to understand that. So here, right, in our discussion, we're talking about a real fire, on Yom Tov, you cannot put it out, right? As we said, right, unless it's like, consumption related, something like that, right? Otherwise, you're not allowed to. But when it comes to electricity, right, that's not the same thing. It's not really the same thing at all. It's a different story. But here's the thing, I don't, I don't spend too much time talking about these things, because it scares people. I mean? Sometimes, people get like frightened by these things when you tell them. They're like shocked, It's like an electric shock they get. So,
But,
I mean,
it's very good information to learn.
I'm sorry?
It's very good information for.
Yeah, I mean, you have to know in halakha, you have to know what you're doing, You have to be aware of what you're doing when you do something. You have to know what's in the cards. What are the consequences of your action? You have to know what you're doing. So that's why it's important to know these things, So here's the thing, right? If a person, I'll give you an example, right? Let's say, a person has a light on in his bedroom, right? And needs to sleep. So, right, to be on the safe side, right? As I do it with a shinu, turn it off with your elbow, God knows what, whatever it is, right? Just in case, whatever. No, whatever. To cover all the bases. You're good with that. If you need to sleep, right, whatever, you need to get the light off. No problem, As I said, not really good to have, incandescent lights, the old ones. Don't bring those into the house. Get rid of them. That'll save you from a lot of problems. So that's the story. Okay, whatever, right? So I hope you understand a little bit, right, what we're talking about there. Since you guys asked me, I got into this the whole thing, but I wasn't really planning to get into this whole thing. That wasn't okay. God bless. Okay, so right, you have to know what you're doing. You have to know what the parameters are. I also heard, like the chief rabbi. I mean, I already knew this even before he said this. I knew very well, but he was giving a lecture. He gives this Saturday night lecture, right? The chief rabbi in Israel. Right here, right, my neighbor over here, right besides my door. A little bit further away. But anyway, right, the chief rabbi, he's once spoke about this, and he says, right, let's say, for instance, you have, let's say you're learning Torah, right, whatever, there's a yeshiva, whatever it is, right, and it's very hot, and you need to, right, turn on the air conditioner. It wasn't on, So he says, what we do is, says if there's no goy there to tell him whatever, we do it with a shinui. We turn it on, with a shinui. Same thing, I mean, he said that, and I didn't say that. He said that. So, I mean, I can tell you right now, right, that it's very clear. There's no issue with that. Because electricity is not from the Torah. But you know what it is? A lot of rabbis don't like to make these distinctions because they're afraid, that it'll bring you to do things which are forbidden. Sometimes it can happen, by the way. For instance, let's say, you're using electricity, right, for cooking purposes, and things like this, So over there, you got to be more careful because, because you're dealing with cooking and you're dealing with like heating elements, which are like a fire, So those things, they're electric, but, it's much more of a concern there, It's a little bit more severe because of you're cooking, there's a fire going on there, heating element. Those heating elements are really hot. Like, when you're using a plata, right? So therefore, when it comes to like using a plata, which most people use today, by the way, right? Nobody's using a blech anymore, except the old timers, right? Whatever, right? Maybe I'm wrong, but especially in Israel, almost nobody uses that anymore because it's like a big mess. You have the gas going, all day, right, all night. The gas, it's makes a lot of heat. It's a big headache. The gas. So therefore, right, if you want to have your plata turn off on Shabbat, use a timer. Don't turn it off directly because you have heating elements there. So that's already there's a prohibition there going on. So you may think, well, yeah, well, the rabbi told me, it's okay. No, I didn't tell you about that. I didn't say that. I'm not talking about that. Okay, so that's why a lot of rabbis don't like to make these distinctions. And by the way, a lot of the rabbis don't know these distinctions. They never learn about these things, so they don't know. So when you tell them, they say, "Oh, what is he talking about? I don't understand." Yeah, you don't understand because you never learned it. That's why you're not going to understand something you never learned. So you have to know what you're talking about. But the truth is that it's a good custom, that the Jews they avoid, using electric items, on Shabbat and Yom Tov, whatever, because one thing can lead to another, and you can get into trouble. So that's why we're not spending all our energy, to telling people these things are allowed, and this and that, because if you start to go too far with these things, you can get into trouble. You know what I mean? So you gotta make sure you have borders. Right? That's the thing. Okay, so you gotta be careful a little bit. Make sure you know what you're doing. Okay, so right, if you're not sure, ask your rabbi, right? Whatever. So it's okay. So anyway, let's go on a little bit. So we'll finish this. Yeah. So as we said, right, the Rashba is telling you here that don't prepare the candle right before the day's over. Depending on the fact that they're going to bring, the assumption they're going to bring assertion, they're going to bring oil. Who told you they're going to bring oil? It's already too late. And as we said, right, in our times, it doesn't apply, this whole thing, because we don't use candles. The synagogue, especially for Yom Tov, we don't do that. But good to know, right, that this is the rule, whatever. So anyway, let's go on. So it says, goes on Bet Yosef, but he says, when it comes to lighting, Bet Yosef says, the candles themselves, if they're already, there's oil in there, there's no problem to do that, even towards the end of the day, because it's still Yom Tov, and you're talking about a synagogue. So there's no issue. Okay. So it says, right, it resembles a case of like washing dishes. By the way, this is also another thing that a person has to know. I'm sure you guys have heard about these rules, but just to clarify a little bit, regarding washing dishes on Shabbat, right, or Yom Tov, whatever it is, right, it's the same. So the rule is like this, that if you still have another meal to go that day, you can wash dishes, because you're getting ready for the next meal. That's okay, But if there's no more meals, right, you really should not wash dishes anymore. Right? Wait till Shabbat is over. Right? We talked about this already, we discussed this. So here it says, right, the Rashba, I'm sorry, the Bet Yosef is saying here, it resembles the case of washing dishes. So what does that mean? But he says like this, right? On the other hand, okay, let's say you weren't planning to have a meal, right? But all of a sudden, you decide to have another meal, which is okay. I mean, you want to eat more. You want to have a little thing there. You want to serve some, I don't know, sushi, right? Whatever, God knows, right? On Shabbat, Yom Tov, whatever it is, right? You want to serve sushi. All of a sudden, you're in the mood for sushi now, right? So he says, if that's the case, you can wash the dishes, in order to have your sushi, right? Because now you're having another meal. So you change your mind, it's okay. You can wash. So same thing here as well. Okay, whatever. אם רצה להדליק אפילו אחר תפילת המנחה, מדליק בכל שעה שיש נרות דלוקות בבית כנסת, הוא כבוד בית השם. Right, so he says, the same thing with the synagogue, right? That what? That, if you're lighting it even towards the end of the day, it's still like the honor of the synagogue, right, going on there. So in the synagogue, there's no problem to do that, to light the candles, even towards the end of the day. Mincha time, right? Whatever it is, right? Okay. Good. So he says, but when is that? Right? Only if you have oil, right? Because otherwise, if you're depending on that the oil will come later, don't depend on that, right? Because it probably will not, since it's the end of the day. So don't bother, just preparing the candle for no reason, because that's like you're doing preparation, for no reason. You're not allowed to do that. Only if you have the oil there, right, already. So then he says you can get ready the wick, get everything ready and light it up. Okay, so that's the end of the Bet Yosef. So we'll now go back to Shulchan Aruch, right, and finish there, because there was also another piece there, I think, that we had to fill in, right, because of this Bet Yosef here. So we'll check what that is. Okay. Yeah, so the beginning of this we already read, but I'm just going to go to the end here. Right, so says the Shulchan Aruch in the end, ותקן הפתילות והששיות ביום טוב אחר מנחה, אם רוצה להדליק בו ביום מותר, ואם לאו אסור, right? So he says, regarding, preparing, right, now, a new candle to light on Yom Tov, as we said, right, after, mincha time, right, which is already like towards the end of the day, pretty much, the afternoon, like, whatever, right, the afternoon. So, there's two different times for mincha, right? Mincha ktana, mincha gdola. I'm not going to get into it now, but anyway, right? He says here that if you're going to light those candles, right? In other words, you got the oil, it's there, so you can do it in the synagogue, as we said, right? No problem, even though it's right towards the end of the day. But you see from there, by the way, that it's telling you that at home you shouldn't do that, So meaning what? Once it's already towards the end of the Yom Tov, right? From later in the afternoon. So what are you going to gain now by lighting candles? You know what I mean? You don't really need it. There's no purpose for it. So therefore he says, right, don't do it. What is the purpose for that? But when it comes to the synagogue, because of the kavod of the synagogue, so there you can do it, he says, right? That's something else. But at home, right, what are you going to do? What are you going to say? Oh, it's for the kavod of the home, right? What, your house is just a big kavod? It's just a regular house. It's not a house of God, right? So therefore, there's no big kavod there. So let me ask you a question, by the way, regarding that. What about if you pray in your house, right, and you learn there, So you sanctified it, no? Now you became like a synagogue or a bet midrash, right? The yeshiva. So isn't that kavod also? So what's the difference between the house where you pray and learn there, and the synagogue where they pray and learn there? What's the difference?
Is it the minyan, the 10?
Right,
The
that's the thing,
hour?
because it's for the public, for the sake of the community, right? For one person, that's not good enough, but for the community, right, that's already more kavod. You know what I mean? But I have to tell you one thing, though. If you don't have a light, to learn Torah, right, and you need to light a candle for the sake of learning right now, even though it's towards the end of the day, that you can do, because you have a need for that. So what we're talking about is that when you don't have a need, just like you're doing it for cover. What cover do you have there, right? What do you want to make your house into some kind of a shrine? What cover do you have there, right? If you have a need, you can do it. If not, forget about it, right? Leave it alone. That's the thing, Okay, so I hope I was clear, right? I guess we'll stop there, Brother Hashem. I have to go now and play Shachrit, You guys are, getting into the night mood. I'm going into the morning mood now. So we'll see you, Bezat Hashem, next time, right? I'll keep you guys informed, right? What we'll do tomorrow, whatever. We'll try to fit it in somehow, right? Whatever. Right now, I'm doing pretty good, so thank God. Right? Thank God, Baruch Hashem. Okay, God bless you. Thanks for coming. Be blessed with wealth and health and happiness. And I wish you were with me over here in Yerushalayim. What can I tell you? I'm having a ball over here.
That's wonderful.
Okay.
Thank you, Rabbi.
There's no better place in the world like to be here. Even in the middle of the war. Trust me when I tell you. Laila Tov, Chazak Baruch.
Kavod Rav, thank you so much.
God bless.